Shocking WWE drama. Seth Rollins breaks his silence and denies Becky Lynch's pregnancy, but what he accuses her of next will blow your mind. In this jaw-dropping revelation, WWE superstar Seth Rollins publicly questions Becky Lynch's pregnancy announcement, turning the wrestling world upside down. Accusations of cheating, deception, and betrayal take center stage as tensions explode behind the scenes. Is this the end of WWE's power couple? What if the person you trusted most, the one you shared a home, a ring, and a legacy with, was hiding a truth so explosive, it could tear apart your entire world? In a moment that stunned fans, fractured alliances, and shattered the illusion of WWE's most iconic couple, Seth Rollins has done the unthinkable. He's spoken out. Not to celebrate. Not to confirm. But to deny. Becky Lynch's recent pregnancy announcement, which many took as a new chapter in a storybook love, has now been called into question. Not by the media. Not by critics. But by the father of the child himself, allegedly, and that's only the beginning. Tonight, we unravel the layers of betrayal, heartbreak, and accusations that have sent shockwaves through the WWE universe. A drama so deeply personal, yet so publicly destructive, it threatens not only the future of Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, but the very fabric of WWE's backstage power structure. Stay with us. Because this story runs deeper than anyone could have imagined. And the man known as the Visionary is no longer playing by the rules. The headlines were glowing. Becky Lynch, the former women's champion, had announced she was expecting her second child. WWE's cameras captured her teary smile, a moment of joy supposedly shared between two superstars who had weathered the storm together. But less than 48 hours later, the mood had changed. The joy was gone. In its place, confusion. Then silence. Then, the breaking of that silence. A single social media post from Seth Rollins. Cryptic, loaded, and deliberate, ignited the fire. No. This wasn't discussed. Not like this. And if this is how the truth gets told, then let's talk about the truth. That message, deleted within the hour but screenshotted by thousands, launched a storm of speculation. Had Rollins been blindsided by the announcement? Was he even aware Becky was pregnant before the news broke? And worse, was he implying it might not be his? Sources close to the couple, many of whom spoke under strict anonymity, confirmed what fans feared. Seth and Becky had been living separately for several weeks prior to the announcement. What had been described publicly as a space for training schedules was, in reality, a quiet separation. One that neither had chosen to disclose, until now. But it wasn't just the separation that made headlines. It was what Seth Rollins allegedly told his inner circle backstage after that post. According to multiple WWE insiders, Rollins wasn't just shocked, he was livid. Not at the idea of being a father again. But at the timing, the secrecy, and the suspicions. Something doesn't add up, he reportedly told a fellow wrestler backstage after Monday Night Raw. The dates don't make sense. And she knows it. Those close to Becky Lynch have denied the claims. But in the world of WWE, where fiction blurs with reality, the personal is never truly private. And this drama wasn't unfolding in silence anymore. It was unraveling in locker rooms, in closed-door creative meetings, in hushed conversations between staff and superstars. Because if Rollins was questioning the paternity, if he was suggesting deception, then the real question becomes, who was Becky Lynch hiding? The accusations didn't end there. According to two independent sources, Rollins has gone further behind the scenes, accusing Lynch not just of misleading him, but of deliberately crafting the announcement as a PR strategy. She wanted to control the story before he could ask the questions, said one source close to Rollins. He felt played, not just as a partner, but as a brand. And that's where this story moves beyond heartbreak. Into the realm of power, of strategy, of emotional warfare. In one of the most politically complex locker rooms in the entertainment industry, Becky Lynch is not just a WWE superstar. She's a symbol. A global face for the women's division. A crossover name with brand deals, press deals, and storytelling leverage few can match. Rollins, for all his accolades, has never been immune to insecurity, especially when it comes to public perception. He's always supported her, one former road agent told us. But deep down, I think it got to him. The way people saw her as the stronger half. The more stable. The more independent. Now, that image, the power couple, the supportive dad, the united front, is crumbling. And it's not just personal fallout that WWE executives are watching. It's the professional one. Because behind closed doors, creative had plans. Mixed tag storylines. Post-baby return angles. A WrestleMania payoff. All of which now stand at risk. Not because of pregnancy, but because of mistrust. More disturbingly, a new name has entered the conversation. One that's never been publicly linked to Becky Lynch before. But whose presence backstage in recent months has raised eyebrows. A newer superstar. Male. Rising fast. Close to Lynch during recent training sessions while Rollins was reportedly away filming side projects. While we cannot independently confirm the identity, two backstage sources cited genuine concern that Lynch may have grown emotionally attached during the period of separation. That's not confirmation. That's not proof. But in the wrestling world, perception is power. And right now, the perception is nuclear, and so Seth Rollins, once silent, once stoic, has begun to speak, not through interviews. Not through staged promos. But through the language of betrayal. If this is the story we're telling, he reportedly said backstage, then let's make sure the fans hear both sides. He's not asking for sympathy. He's demanding clarity, but Becky Lynch has remained publicly silent. No follow-up post. No statement. Just a carefully curated stream of fitness content, motivational reposts, and promotional teases for her upcoming book. The silence, however, is not being interpreted as peace. It's being seen, fairly or not, as a message. That the man doesn't flinch under fire. That she doesn't owe an explanation to anyone. Not even him, and that silence may be louder than anything she could say. This isn't the first time the wrestling world has watched a personal relationship disintegrate in real time. But this one is different. Because of what's at stake. Not just reputations. But a child. A family. A shared legacy that now hangs in limbo, caught between accusation and denial, between branding and betrayal. Some WWE executives are reportedly deeply concerned about what happens next. Not just for PR. But for the locker room morale. If this turns into a war, one insider said, it could divide everyone. You've got people who admire Becky, people loyal to Seth, and people who just don't want to be caught in the crossfire. And the crossfire has already begun. One female superstar, who has traveled with both Lynch and Rollins in the past, reportedly told Creative that she doesn't want to be booked in any segment involving either of them until this clears up. Others are more opportunistic, seeing the drama as a chance to climb the ladder. You never let a good scandal go to waste, joked one rising heel, overheard outside gorilla position. But not everyone is laughing. Because what Seth Rollins hinted at next is far more devastating. But what Seth Rollins revealed next wasn't just another twist. It was a declaration. A shot across the bow. And it was personal. In a closed-door meeting with WWE management, Rollins reportedly made an alarming claim, one that insiders are still struggling to process. According to multiple sources, Rollins told WWE officials that he believed Becky Lynch had been strategically building a narrative of victimhood for months, anticipating the breakdown of their relationship. Not only had she allegedly withheld the truth about her pregnancy timeline, he claimed, but she'd also been subtly shifting her public image in a way that would frame him, if and when things imploded, as the absent, distracted partner. She's setting the stage, he reportedly said. And I'm the villain in her story. This wasn't just bitterness. It was a belief that he had been emotionally and publicly maneuvered into silence. And now, he was done playing that role. According to a senior producer present at the meeting, Rollins didn't yell. He didn't cry. But his voice trembled with what could only be described as devastation. She wants to be the hero. Fine. But not by making me the heel outside the ring. Those words hit hard. Especially because for years, the world believed in them, together. Seth and Becky weren't just another wrestling couple. They were the wrestling couple. Champions. Partners. Parents. Icons of what it meant to build a shared legacy inside and outside the ring. To now watch that image burn, slowly, publicly, and with every layer stripped bare, is almost too much for some longtime fans and staff to bear. Backstage, opinions have splintered. Some stand by Becky Lynch, adamant that she's being unfairly targeted in a male-dominated space that has historically weaponized female independence. Others rally around Rollins, insisting that his pain is genuine, that he's not the type to make wild accusations unless something truly broke him. But there's one thing everyone agrees on: something inside Seth Rollins has changed. He's colder. Quieter. Sharper. And it's starting to affect more than just his personal life. According to one of his tag partners, Rollins has begun rewriting his promos, inserting subtle jabs about false idols and narratives built on lies. He's taken creative control over his segments. He's asked to approve match finishes in advance. And when asked why, he gave a chillingly calm answer: I need to make sure I control my own story now. Because someone else already tried to rewrite it. Even more unsettling, some of Rollins' frustrations have reportedly spilled into the locker room dynamic. He's withdrawn from group travel. He eats alone. He skipped several non-televised appearances, citing emotional exhaustion. And when one fellow superstar tried to joke about the situation during a recent backstage skit rehearsal, Rollins didn't laugh. He didn't even speak. He just stared. And then he left. It's that kind of silence that's begun to worry those closest to him. The kind that doesn't boil over but festers, the kind that becomes a wound with no visible scar. Becky Lynch, meanwhile, has not responded to the accusations publicly. But a close friend of hers told us off the record that Becky is heartbroken and blindsided by the direction things have taken. This was supposed to be a celebration, the friend said. Now it feels like she's being hunted. But even in heartbreak, Lynch has remained the consummate professional. She's continued to appear at scheduled charity events. She's still filming promotional materials for her upcoming projects. And according to her publicist, she remains committed to her fans, her family, and her future. Still, the emotional strain is becoming more visible. At a recent red carpet event, Becky appeared composed but noticeably subdued. Gone was the fiery charisma, the sharp one-liners. In its place, a distant smile, a stiffness in her posture. When asked about the pregnancy announcement, she simply said, "I'm grateful." And nothing more. But those who know her say the hurt runs deep. Not because of the rumors. But because of who started them. She always believed they'd protect each other, said one friend. No matter what happened between them personally. She never thought he'd do this. And that's the central heartbreak of this story, not just the drama, but the disbelief. That two people who once stood in the ring together, arms raised, championship belts in hand, could now be locked in a battle of silence and suspicion. That what began as a private separation has now become a public civil war. And while WWE has yet to make an official statement, sources say internal discussions have already begun on how to pivot. Mixed tag appearances featuring Rollins and Lynch have been quietly pulled from future house show rundowns. Joint interviews have been cancelled. Merchandise featuring the two as a couple is being reviewed. It's damage control. But it may be too late because this story is no longer just backstage whispers. It's everywhere. From podcasts to Reddit forums, from wrestling news outlets to mainstream gossip columns, everyone has a theory. Some say it's a cleverly crafted WWE storyline designed to mirror real life. Others insist it's all too real. That the pain on Rollins' face when he walks to the ring isn't kayfabe, it's grief. The kind of grief that makes you question everything you thought you knew. About love. About loyalty. About truth, and just when it seemed the tension had reached its peak, came the second shock. A leak. Not from a press conference. Not from a podcast. But from someone on the inside. A text message thread, allegedly between Rollins and an unnamed WWE producer, made its way to wrestling journalists late Thursday night. The message, verified by two separate sources, included a line from Seth that stopped the industry cold. "If I'm not the father, I deserve to know. If I am, then why lie?" It was the first time he had put that accusation in writing. The first time the speculation crystallized into something more than whispers, and with it came chaos. Calls were made. PR teams mobilized. Lynch's representatives issued a short, three-line statement: Becky Lynch stands by the truth. She will not dignify harmful rumors. Her priority is her family. But the damage was done. The door had been opened. And what lay behind it was a mess. WWE's top couple was no longer a beacon of unity. They were a cautionary tale unraveling in front of millions. And now, both were faced with an impossible question: do they continue in silence and risk letting the public write their story? Or do they speak out, and risk losing what little trust remains? Behind closed doors, Seth Rollins has reportedly begun pushing for an in-ring promo. Not a storyline. Not a segment. A real promo. His words. His truth. On live television. According to an internal source, Rollins believes that if everyone else is going to speculate, then the fans deserve to hear it from me. WWE has yet to approve the request. But the very idea has sent shockwaves through production. Because if it happens, if Seth Rollins walks into the ring and breaks the fourth wall, speaking not as the visionary, but as the betrayed partner, then WWE won't just have a scandal. It'll have a reckoning. But even as Seth prepares to speak, another voice may soon enter the fray. Because Becky Lynch, according to insiders, is considering her own response, not in a promo, but in print. Her upcoming memoir, which was originally intended to cover her wrestling journey, may now include a chapter addressing the recent events. And according to her editor, she's not afraid to tell her side. The manuscript is currently in revisions. And while nothing is confirmed, those close to the project say the final version may arrive sooner than expected. With new pages and new truths. So where does this leave the WWE universe? In limbo. Watching. Waiting. Wondering which truth will emerge and which will remain buried. Because this isn't just about a breakup. It's not even just about a pregnancy. It's about legacy. About who gets to shape the story. And who gets left out of it. Behind every match, every promo, every championship belt, there are real people. With real heartbreaks. Real questions. And sometimes, no real answers. Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch once gave fans a glimpse of what wrestling could be at its most human: love, resilience, triumph. Now, they're showing us something else: what happens when the performance ends, and the silence becomes deafening, and in that silence, another question echoes louder than ever: if trust was broken, who broke it first? And so the silence continued, until it didn't. Because in the days that followed Seth Rollins' alleged leak, another whisper began to circulate. A name. The same name that had quietly swirled through earlier backstage rumors. Only now, it had a face. And a timestamp. Security footage, discreetly reviewed by someone within WWE's travel department and leaked anonymously to an independent wrestling blogger, showed Becky Lynch arriving at a private training facility in Orlando, accompanied by another superstar. The footage wasn't scandalous on the surface, two wrestlers entering a gym together. But what made it suspicious was the date, 3 days after Seth Rollins had flown overseas for a brand partnership commitment, and just a week before Becky's announcement. The male superstar in the footage has not been publicly identified by WWE. But fans and sleuths quickly narrowed down the possibilities. A newer talent, younger, charismatic, and recently praised by Becky in an interview about the future of the business. And while the footage alone proves nothing, it added gasoline to an already raging fire. Did it mean they were romantically involved? Not necessarily. But in the world of wrestling, where backstage alliances often blur with personal ones, the optics were damning. Seth Rollins, when asked about the footage during a rare post-show media appearance, didn't deny it. He didn't even address it directly. But his answer was enough. "Let's just say," he said with a bitter smirk, "some people train harder when they think no one's watching." That comment sent social media into a frenzy. Within hours, #RollinsKnows and #WhoWasWithBecky were trending worldwide. And just like that, the story was no longer a private matter. It was an open war. Becky Lynch's camp responded quickly. A source close to her insisted the footage was being manipulated to fuel a toxic narrative and that Becky had trained with multiple male colleagues during that period. But again, the damage had already been done. Public opinion was dividing sharply. In one corner, fans and personalities who saw Seth Rollins as a scorned partner, humiliated and lied to. In the other, those who viewed Becky as a woman being vilified for continuing to live her life while under an impossible microscope. What neither side could ignore, though, was the tension creeping into WWE programming itself. Matches were being subtly rebooked. Seth and Becky were being kept on opposite tours. Creative teams were instructed to avoid any crossover mentions, no subtle nods, no callbacks, no references to their shared past. A once proud partnership now scrubbed from the airwaves like an abandoned storyline. And yet, it wasn't just being erased. It was being recontextualized. One former creative team member admitted that WWE had internally discussed repackaging Seth Rollins' character to reflect this personal drama, subtly, of course. Not as a bitter ex, but as a darker, more hardened version of the visionary. A man betrayed. Not by an opponent. But by life. And Becky? The idea of turning her heel, or even building a redemption arc, was floated, and quickly rejected. "She's too valuable," one executive said. "Whatever's happening behind the scenes, she's still Becky Lynch. We protect that." But behind those closed doors, protection wasn't coming easily. Especially not after the second leak. This time, it wasn't a photo. It wasn't a video. It was a voicemail sent anonymously to a wrestling podcast. The voice message, which was immediately authenticated by multiple audio experts, was reportedly a private message Becky left for a mutual friend, recorded weeks before the pregnancy announcement. The message, though incomplete, included one line that exploded across headlines: "He's never here. And when he is, he's not really here. I feel like I'm raising a child alone already." That sentence, raw and vulnerable, shifted the narrative again, because while Seth had painted himself as blindsided, Becky's voice revealed something else: a woman who felt abandoned. Not by betrayal, but by absence. And for many fans, that changed everything. For the first time, people began to ask, what if both were telling the truth? What if this wasn't a story of good versus evil, betrayal versus loyalty, but something more human? A relationship frayed by distance. By ambition. By the crushing weight of expectation. What if Seth's silence hadn't been manipulation, but detachment? What if Becky's secrecy hadn't been deception, but fear, that complexity? Messy, painful, real, was something the wrestling world wasn't used to seeing outside the ring. And it only deepened with what came next, because amid all the speculation, all the leaks, all the cryptic posts and passive-aggressive interviews, Becky Lynch disappeared. No public events. No podcast appearances. No updates on the pregnancy. Just a complete, intentional silence. WWE issued a statement saying she had stepped away for health and privacy. But insiders say the real reason was emotional. She needed a break, one producer said. She wasn't sleeping. She was breaking down before tapings. This wasn't sustainable. Seth Rollins, for his part, kept working. But those close to him say the toll is showing. His matches are tighter. More brutal. He stopped doing public signings. He no longer allows interviews unless they're fully scripted or cleared in advance. And when he walks backstage now, people make room. Not out of fear. Out of respect for a man clearly walking through fire. Still, despite everything, he hasn't publicly walked away. He hasn't buried Becky. He hasn't named the other man. And when asked recently if he still loved her, his answer was a whisper caught by a hot mic. That's the worst part. Because love doesn't vanish in betrayal. It doesn't evaporate in silence. It lingers. It aches. It complicates everything. Especially when there's a child on the way. Especially when your life is lived in the spotlight, and that's where this story finds itself now, at a crossroads not of careers. Not of characters. But of hearts. Two people, once united in glory, now divided by suspicion, misunderstanding, and choices that can't be undone. And yet, somewhere beneath the noise, beneath the brand deals and the push notifications and the leaks, is the question that no one can answer. Is this truly the end? Or just the most painful chapter in a story still unfinished? The fans want resolution. WWE wants control. But for Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, maybe all they ever wanted was something that wrestling could never give them: peace. But peace, in the world they've built, is the rarest title of all. It's not scripted. It's not earned through promos or championship matches. It's not found under bright lights or in the chance of a crowd. Peace comes quietly, and in their case, painfully, when the fighting stops and the questions are no longer worth asking. Yet for Seth Rollins, the questions are still screaming in his mind. Multiple sources close to the production team confirm that Rollins has begun documenting everything: text messages, timestamps, travel schedules, old footage, building what one insider described as a personal archive. Not for legal action, they say. Not even for the press. But for his own clarity. For a man who has built his life on controlling chaos in the ring, this is the one chaos he can't escape. He's not trying to expose Becky Lynch. He's trying to make sense of her. And perhaps, of himself. One night after a Raw taping in Atlanta, Rollins was seen alone in the arena, long after the cameras stopped rolling. Security said he sat in the front row, staring at the ring for over an hour. Just sitting. Silent. As if trying to remember what it used to feel like, to be celebrated, to be whole, to know who he was. When he finally left, he left behind only one thing: a folded piece of paper with one handwritten line. Tell me it wasn't all for nothing. It's unclear whether it was meant for Becky. Or for himself. Becky Lynch, still silent in the public eye, has reportedly returned to California, staying with a private friend known for working with celebrities during emotional crises. A therapist, yes, but also a fixer. Someone who knows how to rebuild the person before they return to the spotlight. According to someone close to her, Becky is in deep emotional retreat, revisiting old memories, writing constantly, and questioning her next move. She's not broken, the source said. But she's hurt in ways that run deeper than headlines. She's also reportedly reached out to WWE to postpone any further involvement in creative planning until after the baby is born. She wants distance. And for once, the company is giving it to her. But the distance hasn't stopped the pressure. Every day, her silence is interpreted. Every non-post, every absence, every red carpet skipped is used to build a case for or against her. But in the quiet, she's reportedly begun composing what insiders say is a personal manifesto, not for publication, not for PR, but for her daughter. One day, she'll want to know what happened, Becky allegedly told her confidant. I want her to hear it from me. And that's where the weight of this story truly lands: not on fame. Not on careers. But on legacy. Because at the center of this storm isn't just two broken hearts. It's a child. One not yet born, but already at the center of a global firestorm. A child whose very existence has become a symbol of suspicion, of storytelling, of betrayal. And for both Seth and Becky, that's the deepest wound of all, that something so sacred, so private, so innocent, has been swallowed by the machine they helped build. Back in Stamford, WWE executives are scrambling to keep control of the fallout. According to two internal sources, a summit was held involving top brass, PR managers, and both superstars' legal teams. The message: prevent further leaks.